Welcome to Men Making a Difference, PGSAO men who inspire and motivate.
Hello, Steve Widmann. How are you today?
I'm great, Miss Braveboy. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So often the constituents in Prince George's County get to hear from me as the elected state's attorney, but you're also working hard on their behalf every single day. So I wanted them to get to know you as well. So why don't you tell our viewers about your role in the office?
Well, I'm currently a gun and drug unit prosecutor. That means that I'm dealing with folks that are drug dealers, typically not users, but typically dealers and higher level dealers that are even the folks that import controlled dangerous substances and provide them to the lower level dealers. I also deal primarily with folks that have firearms that for a variety of reasons aren't supposed to. Typically folks that have prior felonies and are thus prohibited.
So tell us if your unit deals with what we call quote unquote victimless crimes, although, the community is the victim when crimes are committed, but, there's no specific victim in those crimes. What do you feel about, prosecuting these types of cases, and why, and what strategies have you all employed to address the issue of mass incarceration for crimes that are committed where there's no specific victim?
So, I would hate to disagree with my elected state's attorney, so I'm going to agree with something you said earlier. The community is the victim when there's a victimless crime. There's a difference between violent crime or theft and the kind of crimes that we deal with. A violent crime or a theft does have a specific nameable victim, and that, you're right, that's not what we deal with. We deal with folks that are the root cause, not the root cause, but are, providers of folks that suffer from addiction. We deal with people that supply firearms to those violent criminals that we were talking about. And sometimes we get lucky and we get somebody who has a firearm before they've committed an act of violence. So sure, these people don't have nameable victims, but anyone that's ever had a friend or family member suffer from addiction can look at the work we do and be like, oh, that's why they exist. That's why that prosecution unit is there. Anyone that's had an illegal firearm used during a crime of violence, there's a chance that we either could have prosecuted that person earlier had we caught them in our unit, or that the people in our unit sold them the gun. So that's kind of the thought on that, is that we address that crime before it has a named victim.
Right, and it is, and so the cases that you deal with are very, they are serious, but then they also provide an opportunity for us to intervene. And I know we have programs like Back on Track, which we intend to expand to include those individuals who have these kind of misdemeanor or low-level weapon offenses. And so what do you think, your role can be as a prosecutor dealing with these types of defendants, those that have not committed the more violent offense, but maybe on a path that could lead to further criminal activity?
That's a great question. We have a lot of people who are entrepreneurial in spirit, if you will, who've gotten into the wrong field. They've found that selling drugs might be their way out of whatever situation they're in, and that's a tragedy all on its own. We have great programs like Drug Court and Back on Track, like you just mentioned, which give us an opportunity for drug court to help the people that have substance abuse problems and get them treatment. And Back on Track is a program where we can let somebody who, does not have a violent criminal past and has found themselves in the situation where they found selling drugs is their best opportunity that they're aware of. We can give them education and resources to not stay on that path, but to turn their lives around. You asked what my role is as a prosecutor. You know, we're always told as prosecutors our role is to seek justice, no matter what justice is. And you know, does it really benefit our community? And I say our because I'm from PG County. I'm born and raised. Does it really benefit our community to have someone who didn't commit a violent crime, whose only criminal history is selling drugs, incarcerated, when we have the tools to put them on a different path in life? Now, at the end of the day, the defendant, whoever that may be, needs to make that choice themselves, but we can offer it.
No, that's great, and it's great to have prosecutors like you in the office who are from the community, who can, empathize with our defendants as well as our victims. Obviously, we do that, but I think it's much more difficult in many ways to empathize with defendants, and to have folks like you who will do that and who will be fair and thoughtful when offering pleas or looking at ways to resolve cases that may not include convictions even, is really important. So tell me, like, who or what inspired you to become a prosecutor?
So I've known ever since I realized I wasn't great at math that I wanted to be a lawyer. I know that sounds like a canned joke line, but it's true.
It's my story too.
Most of us are. Most of us. And I wanted to be a trial attorney. I've always wanted to be a trial attorney. And when I was in law school, I learned, actually it was a little before that, I had an opportunity to intern with a judge that's actually sitting in our district court bench still, Judge Heffron. And he gave me the insight that you have the option to be a prosecutor, a public defender, or a military attorney if you want trial experience. And that's, I was looking at those three jobs, and everyone who I'd ever interned with suggested prosecution was a good choice for me. I interned for Bob Heffron. I interned for Judge Acosta up in Montgomery County when he was with the Prince George's County Police Department. He also used to be a prosecutor. And with Mike Glenn, when I worked for our office as a Rule 16, it's a Rule 19 now, but it's a student prosecutor. And I fell in love with the job. I love being a prosecutor for some of the reasons we already talked about, to protect our community, to work with victims, to work with the police. And this is something deeply personal to me, but it's part of my religious beliefs as a Catholic, that if you want to admit what you've done is wrong, then you should show mercy and we should help you. And I like to think of that when I give a plea offer. If someone wants to come in and admit guilt, then I'm going to give them whatever is fair under the law, and probably a light touch. As light as I can go under the guidelines, really, is typically my approach if someone wants to admit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the direction that we must all move in, because this issue of mass incarceration is real. As you know, it disproportionately impacts people of color, specifically in our county, Black men. And we can't incarcerate our way out of it, because then we leave broken homes, broken families, hurt communities. So it really is important for us to be thoughtful. And I'm so grateful to have someone like you in the office who is in this really has this really unique perspective and an opportunity to do what you believe is right. And which brings me into my next question, which I think you kind of answered, but what unique perspective do you bring to this office? You talked a little bit about your faith, and I think that guides all of us in our decisions. But what perspective do you bring that you think is a little different than maybe other folks in the office?
Oh, that's actually an easy one, and it's not strictly my faith. I've got friends from growing up here in the community who have records. Mm-hmm. I have friends who have suffered from addiction, and not, I don't know every prosecutor's or every attorney's history, but I think that's unique, is to
Yeah.
know, that the folks you grew up with don't always get the benefit of having life go their way. I consider myself very fortunate, very blessed to have got a great education and got into the opportunity to serve our community as a prosecutor. Not everybody has that. And everybody that comes through the doors of the courtroom, defendant, victim, defense attorney, witness, they're just folks that live in our community. And first and foremost, they're people that live here. My parents live here. My wife's parents live here. My grandfather lives here. Like, this is, everybody that walks through the door is just another member of the community first, regardless of their position in life. So they should be treated just like people. And that's all it is.
Yeah, that's it. And you're so right. So what motivates you to do this work? I know that obviously you grew up here, but it is difficult. And I also want you to tell us about some of the more challenging cases that you have, because you deal with some really complex cases, oftentimes involving interdiction and other things. So so what motivates you to do the work you do? And then tell us about maybe one of your most interesting or challenging cases.
So, okay. What motivates me to work as hard as I do, or as hard as we are required to do in our office, is just a work ethic I've had imposed on me through my parents growing up. Is this is my job, and it's my job to do the best at it that I can. And I already talked about why I wanted to be a prosecutor and why I want to do justice. So that all kind of answers, that is, it's just, if I'm going to have a job, I'm going to do it the best that I can. As for a challenging case, you kind of hinted at it. I do a lot of parcel interdiction cases with our wonderful narcotics enforcement division at the county, and with the Maryland State Police's drug interdiction task force. And those cases are typically very involved. I have one coming up. Well, I don't want to talk about any specific cases.
Right.
But they're typically very high volume. 4 or 5 kilograms of cocaine, gallons of PCP, literal gallons. And they're not incredibly technical once you really get down to it. But it's not as easy as, and I think we talked about it earlier, it's not as easy as, here is my victim, Mrs. Jones. Let her tell you her story, members of the jury, and this is why you should find Mr. Smith guilty. That's not the world the gun and drug unit operates in. The gun and drug unit operates in, members of the jury, this individual, this defendant, was found with X number of drugs or this firearm. And here is the very legal and technical reason he's not allowed to have that. And, we don't have the personal hook that the victim cases have. So that's, I think, what makes it challenging. I did have, since it's an opportunity to talk about a case, I'm going to talk about, I guess, a fun case, but it does have those technical challenges. I had a defendant who, was in possession of a firearm after he had committed a robbery. This makes him in violation of our gun possession by prior felon crime. And, he found himself in a bad spot. The police were on patrol in his neighborhood, and he looked up, he saw him, and he started running. And that's, immediately the police think, okay, well, he's running from us for no good reason. We're gonna chase him, figure out why he's running. And he had a gun. I mean, he tried to throw it over a fence, and they eventually caught him. They eventually recovered the firearm. And we don't know what he was going to do with it, if anything. We do know he had a prior criminal record for a robbery with a firearm. But like I said, it's really hard to convey that to a jury. This is wrong, and here's why, when you don't have that personal hook that so many of our victim crimes have.
So let's just transition a little bit into my next question, and it's one of my final questions is, hey, we're dealing with a pandemic. So most of us, we're working from home, but we're working, I think, more hours in a day than we do when we're in the office, which is a little crazy, but it is what it is. We work hard. We love the work we do. But, how is it working from home? How has the pandemic kind of changed how you think about the justice system and how we're doing justice, and what lessons learned do you think we should carry in even after the pandemic?
So a lot of prosecutors, especially my colleagues in district court, work a lot of hours all the time. I think the gun and drug unit is pretty similar. I'm not convinced I'm working more hours, just slightly different hours than I would at the office. And the lack of commute is nice. So I think the lesson that we can learn from working through the pandemic is that I think we can take away two big ones. So much of our job as attorneys can be done from home with some discipline. We can screen cases, we can send discovery, we can send plea offers, we can run guidelines, and we can do status conferences. And I've got some colleagues who have done motions over Zoom. So it clearly works. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's an opportunity for people to, maybe improve their work-life balance. I can't bring my dog into the office unless you tell me I can, but I don't mind having the ability to pet her in between meetings.
Yeah.
That's very nice and gives her a little attention. She's actually new to our family. She was adopted at the beginning of this month.
Congratulations.
From the SPCA, and she's a sweetie. So
you have a rescue. Congratulations, and thank you for that. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, she knows we're talking about her, so she's over here in that state. But I think that's a big win, is that you can do certain things from home that the lack of commute or the different hours lets you do. Like, it's pretty normal for me to be at the office till 6:37 or later, and for me to work till 7:30 to 9 at home. Well, I'm still at home. I can help my wife with dishes, laundry, dinner, cleaning the house, whatever she wants me to do. I can walk the dog in between, things like that. It's a big plus to be able to improve the work-life balance. I think the other big lesson from working through the pandemic is something we all kind of already knew. The nonviolent offender doesn't need to stay in jail.
Right.
And I think I know very early on in the pandemic, before we closed the courthouse, I remember there being a series of joint motions between our office and the public defender. And I just happened to be one of the few state's attorneys in the building that day. And so the public defender had me sign a bunch of them, and no problem. If this person shouldn't be in,
absolutely,
why should we keep them there?
Yeah.
I can think of a couple of reasons for strategy, but not for the purposes of
justice.
Yes and no. It depends on a case-by-case basis, but yeah, for the most part, why are you in there when you could be at home working or taking care of your kids?
Absolutely. Well, I really, again, Steve, this has been great to get to know you a little bit more, and just to know that we have shared values and we see so many things the same. I also grew up in the county, and so I get it. I know people who have committed offenses, but ultimately everyone, even defendants, have families. And what I've also learned is no one's all good or all bad. People are just people, and sometimes they do things, and we hold them responsible, and we make decisions on what we think is fair and just. But thank you so much. I know we're running out of time. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you. I love working with you and look forward to our next Zoom meeting.